gather that information with other sites that you've gone to across the internet, and they pool that information together. And you don't think about that, but this is all automated. And all these sites across the internet have your information. You think about it, just Facebook alone has about 7,000 pieces of information on you in general, in average. And if you're an active user, it's even more. So you need to be careful about where you're putting your information out there. The second most important piece of information hackers are trying to get is financial information. And so that's why you never want to put any information. I'll give you an example. My in-laws are closing on a house or selling their house, and the attorneys needed their information. I think we have a social security numbers. You have a social, your version of that is a social, a different name for it, but basically it's your personal identification number. And so they sent an email asking for my mother-in-law to give her social security number over an email, totally unprotected. This is a 83-year-old woman who was smart enough to know not to do it. However, my brother-in-law sent the information over in an unprotected email to them without a second thought. And he's a banker. So this is how easy it is for people to get this information. People just don't think. So now that information theoretically is floating out there on the open internet. All it takes is a hacker to break into that attorney's office files to get that kind of information. So people need to think about that, and you need to talk to your clients about not sending you information, personal information through open emails and things like that. And we'll talk about that in a second. So when we talk about, if you look at step one about getting your own house in order, identify the types of personal information you're capturing. And you can get this kind of information either from the Canadian website and I'll put this up at the end of the slides. It identifies what are the personal information codes, or also GDPR. And I'm going to give you the UK version of that, because that's a very easy site to use. Number two, you want to make sure that you're determining your lawful basis for processing. Is it consent? Is it, I'm doing this because we have a contract in place? There's about 6 or 7 different reasons within GDPR. These reasons aren't necessarily included in Canada. Basically with Canada, you need consent. So you need to determine, why am I getting this lawful basis? Is it for Canada or is it for international reasons? So I'm not sure how many on this call are dealing with international customers versus Canadian customers. So, you know, you'll have to determine that. And you can also work with a consultant if you need to, but a lot of this you can determine yourself. You can, especially in these times when money's tight, it's easy to do this yourself if you have the time to do it. 3 is, if you're a office owner or manager, document your processes. Just write these down step by step. The easy way to do it is take a Post-it pad, 4x6 or something like that, and just write down the process, find a blank wall and start putting them up on the wall so that you can move them around, and then transfer that to paper. And the reason why you do that is because you have people who can contribute different ideas. And so that way you don't forget a step in the process. And then once you have all the steps on the Post-it notes, you just start to document that on paper. It's very easy to do. You don't miss steps, and it's less frustrating. And it goes very quickly that way. And then what you can do is you look at these processes that you have and say, all right, what do we need to do? And what do we do just because we've always done it that way? Start to streamline your processes and look at it and say, okay, what in this case is, you know, out of date? We don't need to do this any longer, or it's a risk to security. So there's ways that you can shorten your process, eliminate processes that take time and add to your cost. So that's a great way to do it. And now you've documented your process. The next thing is look at your data storage regulations, or sorry, your data storage processes and also procedures that you have, and decide on what your new policy is going to be. I know a lot of companies that have all their records from day one just because they don't want to do it. If you're a salesperson, you have all of your marketing materials from day one just because you don't want to throw it away. You might want to talk to that person who booked a program 15 years ago because they might be interested in it again. Or you've sent marketing emails out to people who've never responded. You don't even know if they're still alive or working in the industry. So you shouldn't keep information, financial information, any longer than the Canadian government or your contracts require. You shouldn't keep marketing information more than whatever you determine is right for your business, generally 5 years or less. And you definitely don't want to keep any kind of personal information longer than you have to. If you can get rid of it within 1 or 2 years, you should look at doing that. But you have to decide and establish a storage policy for your company and then publish that with your customers so that they're aware of it and make sure that they concur with that. Then next, what you want to do is invest in a vulnerability assessment with your IT systems. It can be very inexpensive to do, pardon me, and it pertains to conducting with an outside service, somebody who does penetration tests on your system and lets you know where you're exposed. So what you want to do is make sure, for instance, that you have a secure website. So if you look at your website and you type it in and it doesn't have an S at the end of the HTTP, you have an unsecured website. That means that you're vulnerable to somebody injecting code into your website or hijacking your website. So you should take a look at that. Next is spam and spear phishing into your emails, and they try to collect your passwords. If you have a lot of people working from home or in your own office, make sure that you have a secure website. A secure Wi-Fi, so that people can't just access it. It's very easy to do that if you don't have a password protected Wi-Fi. And if you have guests who come in, when you do allow people to come back to your office, make sure you have a guest password and don't let them come into your regular site. The next threat that's there is physical access to your computers or cell phones. Probably a little less right now because people are working from home for the most part, but when you come back to the offices or travel on site, that's a big issue. Out-of-date firewalls and operating systems. Make sure your computer systems are always up to date. And the last thing that I want to talk about in here is making sure that you as a company are subscribing to a professional password management system. Number one, you can get them for free if you want to as an individual. There's 3 of them. There's LastPass, there's, and you can go to these lastpass.com, OnePass, which is onepassword.com is their website, or keepersecurity.com. All 3 of those are very good, and they're either free or there's a subscription that you can purchase, whichever you choose. You can, with a one complex password, you can have it set different complex passwords for all of your websites all of your sites that you go to. And it's very secure. They're encrypted passwords with multi-level authentication. So I encourage you to do it individually, but also as a company to do it. And we did that with our company and had all of our employees subscribe. We subscribed to it, but had all of our employees participate in it and make sure that they, changed all their passwords to manage with it. The next one is to update your policy to reflect either the GDPR or local regulations. And there's 7 things that you need to do that. One is you have to have a visible privacy policy. And these are listed out here. Ensure your visibility on the website. So the policy that you have for GDPR needs to encompass Canadian regulations as well as GDPR. The easiest way to do that, because the GDPR is more restrictive, is to follow that first and then take into account any regulations that you have that are federal or provincial, so that you make sure that you're in compliance with everybody. Next, you want to make sure that you have a lawful basis of processing, how you're going to do it, whether it's consent, contractual, or whatever. And generally, it's one process that you're going to use for that. You're going to talk about if you have cookies on your website and explain what those are used for. If you do any kind of tracking, like with Google Analytics or anything like that, you have an explanation of how that is used and what kind of information is sold or not sold. The more that you can talk about that and have them realize that you're an honest broker, the better off you are. So explain the purpose for collecting your data. Also talk about the rights that they as a data subject person have. That way it's clear to them that you're there just to gather data for the purposes of the incentive trip, not for reselling their data. Or if you're collecting it for a merchandise program or something like that, that it's only used to fulfill the program. You're not there to sell them other things. If you are there to sell them other things, then you need to disclose that. You also want to publish clear contact information so that if they have any issues, they can go to somebody in your organization. Generally, it's best to put a specific person's name, like the owner's name, or the person who's your data protection officer. But if you can't do that, then put a title. Just make sure that that email then that goes to a specific person who you know is going to be there, like the owner of the company if you're a small company, or the head of IT or something like that, so that it doesn't sit in an email that nobody monitors. Any questions so far? Okay.
Bruce, before we carry on, there are a couple questions in the chat. Okay. I think primarily from Moira. Moira, I don't know whether or not you want to come off mute and speak with Bruce directly. And we can't hear you. There we go. No. There, maybe.
Hi there, sorry about that.
There, that's perfect. Awesome.
Sorry, for some reason my microphone wasn't working. I just wanted to ask Bruce, you touched on password management systems. The one I'd heard about a lot was Dashlane. I was wondering if you had any input on that one?
Unfortunately, I don't. If you go through it and it's an encrypted system, and the things I would look for is, one is it has multi level authentication. Mm-hmm. Two, does it work if you're offline? That's an important one because some of the systems don't. I think LastPass it has come up with a workaround on that, but they didn't. But OnePass and Keeper Security do. I know that. Those are the three that I'm familiar with. So I don't know anything else about that. So just look for those two things. See if they have a free version. If they do, then I think that's fine. And, and then check just to see what the customer ratings are on there and if they have enough feedback. Great. The key is going to one of those because it's important to do that, because you need a password that's at least 20 characters long to be secure, and that has a combination of letters, numbers. If you can get one that does special characters as well, that's even better. So any one of those three that I mentioned offer that, and I'm sure the one that you mentioned offers it as well. Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Yep. I had one more question for you. Sure. And that's about becoming certified as a compliance officer in either PIPEDA, if that's how you pronounce it, or I understand GDPR is people most look to GDPR because it's international. So is there such a thing in Canada as a GDPR compliance officer, and how would one go about getting that training? I know that companies will probably want to hire consultants in data security. So I was just curious about that. Yeah, so what I've found so far is if you want to pursue a career in that, is they are looking for people with IT backgrounds,
Oh, okay.
number one. That's the first and foremost, and that's the hardest part. But small businesses don't necessarily need that. They need consultants who can work with processes, policies, and so forth. Now, to answer your second question, GDPR, to get that certification is great because then you can work with international companies. There's, if you send me your email, I can send you the link to the certification they offer international. You can take it from Canada or the US without having to go to Europe to do it. It's a UK company. As for Canada, I'm gonna, at the next to last slide, there's a link to the Canada government website, and I'll bet that that's where the information, you can find it there. I haven't actually seen it to get certified in Canada yet, but I bet that's where it would be, so I would start there.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome, good luck, and if I can offer any other input, I'd be happy to help you.
Lovely, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're running close on time, so let me just talk to you about, these are the next area real quick that you want to work with, is working not only with your customers, but with your vendors, because that's the other side of it. Under GDPR and also with Canada, you're responsible for your vendors handling of data. So you want to make sure that you educate their staff and owners as to your policies and how you want the information to be handled as well. Communicate the standards in advance, and also make sure that you enforce that, and when you have time, audit them for compliance. So that's going to be responsible for you as well. The important thing, and the reason why you want to do all this, is because when you make sure that you develop this trust with your customers and that, they've seen a 30%, up to a 30% increase in sales for organizations that have done that, because they've become a trusted partner. So there is a payback to doing this. Now, right now, because money is tight for a lot of companies in that, you can do a lot of this yourself. In addition to working with consultants, if you go to these websites, you can get the information you need. Now, first of all, for the information on Canada, for both the federal and the provinces, you can go to the first link that I've provided there to you. But secondly, if you want the how-to of GDPR, which also gives you the step-by-step on how to complete this, the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK has the best site for GDPR. And that's why I put it there. There is a master GDPR site, if you will, by the European Union, but it's a little bit more cumbersome to use, but it will list all the regulations in detail. And so, but start here, because this will give you all the templates that you need and so forth. The Canadian site will give you all the regulations and the details by province. So both are helpful for you. And then anything I can do to help you answer any questions after this, if you think of it, I'll provide you with my email here. You can just reach me at this address. And I have the like a handout card, which is all the slides before this, with the exception of the last slide, which I can provide to you again if you email me from it. I won't spam you with sales literature. I'll just give you that handout card. And that's it. I think we made it within the 30 minutes.
We did. Thank you so much for all the great information. And I believe we are all to return to the general session at this time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. Take care.